What's up, guys? Welcome to this week's episode of Merricks Garage. If you are not a subscriber, go ahead and hit that subscribe button and ring that bell. And let's get into it, because I have had a busy couple weeks banging out a lot of stuff, and I'm cautiously optimistic that the end is in sight. This build is going to be rolling out of the garage here probably in the next, I'm going to say 4 weeks. Don't hold me to that, but I think I'm close. And today I'm going to show you what I've got done, what I still got to do. Simplicity is the name of the game when it comes to the burb. I'm not four-linking, I'm not doing any crazy coilovers and triple bypasses. I'm running a simple monotube Bilstein shock absorber. This is actually the same shock exactly that was on the Blazer before I linked it, as are these Ford shock towers. These are Ford shock towers you can buy on Amazon. I'll link it down below, and they're great. You can bolt them on, you can weld them on, you can cut them. They give you a great location to remote mount your shocks, so you can use, in my case, I'm using a 14-inch Bilstein. I run it at about 8 inches of compression, giving me about 6 inches of extension. And I removed, cleaned up, and repurposed these bump stop brackets. They are now directly above the spring perch. I took the spring perches that I used on the Blazer, I added both on either side, and then I used the other ones to act as bump stop strike pads. Now, I know these will get chewed up should there be any articulation, but for straight bumps like cruising through parking lots over speed bumps, I should be just fine. So the suspension, it's simple, much like the rest of the truck. Leaf springs, simple shock absorber, simple mechanical or just elemental bump stop. Nothing to go wrong, really. Nothing to break. Very easy to fix, proven, and reliable. Okay, we got a 203, 205 doubler transfer case here. This thing is heavy. This is cast. I'd guess this thing weighs close to 300 pounds. So we got it in here with manpower, but we're going to use smarts to get it out. Yay! Winning! Look at that! Work smarter, not harder, right? The transfer case is one of the last pieces of the puzzle regarding the drivetrain that I had to sort out. I was planning on using the 241 I had from the stock vehicle, but that wouldn't work. So I started looking for a 205. And as luck would have it, my neighbor, literally, he's like 2 blocks away from me, is doing a Blazer links conversion and throwing in a Magnum 205. So this past weekend, I helped him pull his 203, 205 doubler. And that's what's going in. What is a 205, 203 doubler? Well, good question. Let me answer that for you. Before we had Magnums and other gear reduction boxes, specific aftermarket gear reduction boxes, we had the doubler, which was a marriage of 2 transfer cases, the 203 and the 205. It took the gear drive of the 203, which is a full-time 4-wheel drive box that came in early 70s vehicles, and then it mates it up to the 205. So you get all the gears of the 205, all of the strength and durability of the 205, and then you get a reduction box, so to speak, in front of it, allowing you to run as a 4-speed. It's similar in theory to the Magnum box. The main difference being with a Magnum box, you're getting a much shorter, smaller, and stronger gear reduction box on front of the 205. The magic with a Magnum is going to be the intermediate shaft, the shaft that connects the reduction box to the transfer case. That shaft is going to experience tremendous torque loads as it is multiplying all the torque ratios that come from the engine through the transmission and then through this box. So that intermediate shaft is critical. On the Magnum, that's called their fat shaft. It's a huge, huge intermediate shaft that is pretty much unbreakable. The other difference being obviously size and weight. The Magnum box is made out of aluminum, so it is substantially lighter than this heavy pig. And quite honestly, if you're looking at doing a doubler or some sort of reduction box in front of a 205, the Magnum's the way to go. By the time that you source all the parts, change input shafts, figure out what parts you need to make this all work and seal properly, you're going to be spending some money, and you may be better off just getting the Magnum in the first place. Now, I do need to separate the two cases to verify what intermediate shaft I have, because there are a couple of variations in here, and I want to make sure I have the strongest intermediate shaft in the middle so that I don't need to worry about this thing grenading itself on the trail. It bolted right up to the Tremec, which was a huge plus. It's got an all-gear design, much like the engine and the Tremec and the axles, and it continues the theme of just overbuilt reliability. It's heavy, it's big, and it's awesome. Hydraulic assist steering is pretty much a must when you start adding significant weight and big heavy tires to a vehicle like this. All the hydraulic assist is doing is adding a hydraulic ram, which you see right here, that is attached hard mounted to the axle and hard mounted to the tie rod. As the steering is articulated or operated, the ram will either extend or retract based on the steering direction, and it will provide assistance pushing the tie rod back and forth. So instead of just relying on your pitman arm coming off your steering box, you've now got leverage on both ends of the axle. These are the new tie rod ends from Off-Road Design. They are a metal on metal design. They also have this Kevlar cap to keep everything nice and tightly sealed. My beef with these guys in the past, especially the cheaper variety, is when it does come time to replace them because they've either gotten sloppy or they're frozen, I can't get them off. I'll undo the castle nut and it will just spin this main shaft, essentially making removal impossible. So I went to Heims for the Blazer after dealing with tie rod end issues for a long time. Now, the Heims do have their share of problems. They're technically not street legal. You don't have any safety capture like you do here with the cotter pin. And also they do wear out faster. So at the suggestion of Stephen Watson, I've jumped over to their metal-on-metal HD tie rod ends. I really like this Kevlar cup. By keeping the whole unit sealed, unlike the Heims, which are open to the elements, these are going to last a lot longer, I think. In addition to running the power tank that will bounce back and forth between the Blazer and the Suburban, I'm also running onboard air. I've gone with a Vi-Air setup with a 2.5 gallon tank and a compressor. And essentially, this is going to be what runs the airbags and air chucks that I've put on the truck. I've got airbags in the back that will help with suspension and towing and load. And then I've also run air chucks on either end of the truck so I can, hook up a line and use that to either run air tools if necessary, inflate tires, blow air to clean off things. So everything's controlled through this. This is my... You might hear the compressor's just kicked on, so we'll let that get some air in it. Knowing that the air compressor tank is full, I can energize, and as you'll see, I can increase the pressure in the airbag for carrying loads, trailering, leveling the ride, and I can do this independently, so I can do the driver's side and passenger side independently. Back up, back down. Very cool. So you can see in the upper left-hand corner of the screen, that is the airbag valve. So there is it inflated and deflated. You can just tap it to get a little bit of power, a little bit of air. Too much. Full empty. I have some cool plans for the air system on here, so you guys are gonna have to stay tuned for what I've got coming up there. But at this point, airbags and air chucks on either corner are going to be the solution. I've been very impressed with this little guy. It puts out a lot of CFM. Its duty cycle is very high and it's relatively quiet. The air tank is 2.5 gallons at 200 PSI. This is my pressure switch, so that will turn it off when it reaches too much pressure. Then I've got tons of ports. So I've got one port that I need to identify for what I'm going to do with it, but the rest are plumbed for either the chucks at the back or go into the airbags. While the Cummins comes in tons of different varieties, that does make it somewhat challenging when you're trying to fit all the various pieces together. This is the idler for my water pump pulley, or some pulley, and this is the fan and fan clutch. This is the backside of the fan clutch, which has a different bore than this. So I've spent the last 20 minutes or so flap disking this guy down so I can get this to interface and get it all mounted. I think this is gonna work, but I'm running into some modifications that maybe there's a solution for this that I could buy, but if I can just fix it with some basic tools, that would be a better solution. Let's see. Let me see if I can get this all back together. While it has been an action-packed few weeks, there are still a lot of things to do. And as cautiously optimistic as I am, I'm also realistic. And I realize that my goal of 4 weeks could easily turn into 8 weeks if I'm not careful. So let's run through what I still need to do to get this thing roadworthy. I need to order drive lines. I need to figure out what my flange is going to be on the front drive shaft to the 205 and order drive shafts from Tom Woods. I need to do some fab work on the rear axle. The rear axle is currently not hung. It is just underneath the truck. So I need to do a whole lot of welding to get the perches on. I need to make sure that I've got some airbag mounts for both the frame and the axle. And I need to get shock tabs and all that stuff. I also need to do a lot of plumbing. All of the fuel lines, all of the brake lines, emergency brake, and all of the electrical needs to be plumbed and run. And when I drop the body down, I'm gonna need to hook up a new clutch master cylinder, which is, I've got the slave down on the Tremec right now, but I need to get the clutch master up on the firewall. I've got to put the hydro boost up on the firewall. I've got to plumb and fill that and get it all connected to the PSC system for hydraulics. And I need to do the cooling, both air and water. I do have a lot of the parts. That has been a part that slows me down is getting all of these, waiting on stuff that is on back order, and saving up enough money to buy what I need. Fortunately, I do have pretty much everything at this point. I've got my intercooler, I've got my radiator, I've got my fan shroud. I purchased a Rob Booney fabrication intercooler mount so I can put the Gen 1, I think it's Gen 1 or Gen 2 intercooler into the core support. What else am I waiting on? Waiting on charge pipes for the intercooler. I picked up a couple of Odyssey AGM batteries this week and Barnes four-wheel drive battery boxes. Those are going to be going on the frame rails somewhere. I'm trying to decide if I put them at the back or the front. I don't want them up in the engine compartment. They just, I don't know. I think they're better off being somewhere else on the frame. Spray the body. Put some body mounts on. I'm going to be adding a body lift of about 1 inch. And what else? See, that's why I'm getting excited. It doesn't seem like there is that much left to do. I know there is. I know it's going to be a knife fight for the next month, but I'm hoping to be driving this thing in September and maybe heading out to some events here in the West. Colorado, Arizona, Utah, just giant road trip. I'll post some details about that as it comes closer. Maybe I can meet some of you guys out on the road. In the meantime,
if you are not a subscriber, come on now, just give me a subscribe, give me a like, drop me a comment. Also, go check out my Patreon page. It is thanks to my Patreons that I have been able to purchase some of the parts that are needed for this build. It's an expensive build. I get a lot of help from sponsors. I get some help from YouTube, from the ad revenue that comes in. But my Patreon page and my Patreon supporters are clutch. And so I just want to say thank you to those guys. If you would like to join my Patreon, I'm going to put a link down below. It's patreon.com/MerricksGarage. And go check out the rest of the Burb build series. I'm going to put it up here. It's going to be a playlist that will have all of my Burb videos. And I hope you guys dig it. We'll see you next week. Merricks Garage.